But welcome to the studio, Nina Siegal.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, congratulations on on your new book, The Anatomy Lesson.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to have it out, finally.
Finally. So did it take a long time?
Well, I moved here in 2006 to work on it. So it took about 6 years to do the research and the writing, of course. And then it took about a year for it to be published. And so now, well, 8 years later, it's out in book form.
Well, eventually then, yeah. And you worked with Ernst van der Wetering.
That's right. Actually, in 2006, the reason I came here was to work with Ernst because I got a Fulbright Fellowship to do the research with him as my sponsor, basically. He's the world's leading Rembrandt scholar. And actually, I showed up on his doorstep and sort of begged him to guide me through Rembrandt research. And at first, he was very reluctant because the truth was I knew nothing about Rembrandt at the time, and I knew nothing about the painting too, in a way, although I had been reading about it for almost a year before I came. And I convinced him by cooking for him. And so I would make these meals for him once a month, and I would send him a chapter that I was working on, and then he would take a look at it and give me some feedback, and that's how it went for about a year.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, it's a fascinating painting, but we can see that gory hand shot. Yeah. But tell us more about the story behind The Anatomy Lesson, what happens in the book.
Well, my story is an imagined story, but what appealed to me at first was I wanted to write a story about the dead man who's in the center of the painting. His name is Aris Kint, and we know a little bit about him. We know that he was a criminal. He was actually a coat thief. And in the 17th century, there were actually a lot of coat thieves because they were...
Because it's so cold in Holland.
Because it was very cold in Holland, that's right. And also because to have a proper coat made, you'd have to go to a tailor, and it was very expensive. And some of them had fur linings, and some of them had beautiful lace ruffs and so on. And a lot of people couldn't afford them. So thieves could make a pretty good living, actually selling them in a place that's now where the Waterloo Market is today.
Ah, it just makes me think of the Eihallen and the little coat please.
Exactly, I was thinking about that too. So Aris Kint was a vagabond, and he lived in many places in Holland. And when I first came here, I actually found a criminal dossier in the Amsterdam City Archives that told this entire criminal history from the time he was 19 when he was first arrested for snatching a purse up until his 28th year when he was finally executed for his last crime, which was trying to steal a coat from a town burgher.
Oh, so it just sounds like, quite tame stuff now, doesn't it? But seriously, it got him killed, I suppose, executed.
Well, even in the 17th century, it wasn't very common for them to execute thieves, but he was what you would call a recidivist thief. So he was doing it over and over and over again. He was banished from several towns in Holland. He was branded in different cities, so he had marks all over him from brands. And so I think it was like to send a message that, this kind of active thievery will not be tolerated in a town of like Amsterdam, an upstanding town. So that was the basis of the beginning of this story. And then but it wasn't all about him. I sort of built the story around him and the different people who were related to his life. And the narrative actually all takes place in one single day in Amsterdam, the day that he's executed and then taken over to the Waag and made the centerpiece of this dissection. And Rembrandt sees him, and so does René Descartes, who's living in Amsterdam at the time and working on his own private anatomies, and several other characters that I invented.
Aha. Okay. And so Rembrandt's there, and he's quite a young man at the time, and there's all sorts of stories there then.
Yeah, Rembrandt's 26 years old. He's just moved to Amsterdam from Leiden. So he's just set up his shop on in Aulenberg Studio, which is called the Academy, and they teach pupils there. But he also is required to produce portraits all the time, and this is his first major commission from the Amsterdam Surgeons Guild. And so his job is to sort of make a class photo, basically, of the Amsterdam Surgeons Guild, but he comes up with a much more lively and interesting way to address the subject.
Yeah. And this painting, if people want to see it, is normally in the Moritz House in The Hague. Is that right?
That's right. That's where it lives. It's been in the Moritz House since the 18th century, I think. But just recently, because they did the renovation, it was in the Gemeente Museum for about a year, I think, as part of an exhibition on anatomy and painting. And it'll go back to the Moritz House and be in the Moritz House when they reopen on June 27th.
June 27th, not long to go.
No.
I'll be back. Now, a recent author, American author Donna Tartt, had also written a novel about a painting in the Moritz House, The Goldfinch. How do you feel about that kind of crossover?
Well, I didn't hear about it, actually. I didn't know she was working on it until I got a rejection from her publisher saying what I thought was a very nice rejection was two such deserving books shouldn't be competing on the same list. So I thought that was nice.
Yeah.
Of course, hers
really
has gotten a lot more attention than mine. But still, I think what probably makes that museum so popular as a venue for these sort of novelistic interpretations is the fact that it's such an intimate space, and you can stand with a painting and you can really be inspired by it on a very personal level. And so and also the girl with the pearl earring is housed there as well. So it's three very sort of famous literary paintings now.
Well, we'll look forward to it reopening. And very quickly then, you came here to write and to research this novel, but what made you stay so long then after that?
Well, I spent about 2 years doing the original research and some of the writing, and then I continued to work on it. I was offered a job to launch Time Out Amsterdam magazine, so I worked on that for 4 years. And then after that, I went freelance, and now I work for the New York Times, writing international cultural articles out of Amsterdam. And I also work for Flow magazine, which is another magazine that's just gone international with an English edition out of Holland. So there's just been one thing that sort of led to another, and I like it here.
Oh, that's good. And of course, we've missed some of the readings, but you have a reading coming up at the Moritz House. When's that?
That's going to be in the opening. We don't have a date yet, but it'll be around the 27th of June. And hopefully I'll be reading in front of the painting, which will be really exciting for me.
Yeah, really special. So if people want to keep involved with that, they could, I guess, visit your website.
Yeah, actually, I'll put the dates on the website. The Dutch edition of the book will come out in late September, early October, and there'll be a whole bunch of events around it then, all in English also. So people can come for those and maybe other stuff in between.
Keep the momentum rolling.
Yes.
Cool. That's ninasiegal.com. Thank you very much for joining us and telling us all about the book.
Thanks so much for having me.